just say that tonight we're going to hear the master plan that is the result of many years of hard work. And I'd like to have Tom introduce the firm that helped us put all this together.
David's going to do it.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. My name is David Smirnoff, and I've been on the board of the Las Vegas County Water District since 2006. And I just wanted to give a very brief history of the Water Movement Control Program, which has led up to the development of this storm drain master plan. And starting in 2008, the district determined that under our enabling legislation, we had authority not only to bring water into the community for potable drinking water purposes, but also to remove water from the district. And we also then had responsibility to maintain our lands. So in 2008, we started this program. We checked with our legal counsel on the suitability of us engaging in this type of programmatic effort, and had the legal opinion that indeed the district did have the authority and ability to do this kind of work. So we contracted initially with BAG Engineering to help us determine if indeed there were any water movement related problems within the district. And in fact, BAG Engineering, after doing some initial surveying, geologic work, looking at the underlying landscaping and looking at some of the storm drain features, identified that indeed we had some very serious problems that were affecting public health and safety and were dangerous conditions related to water movement control. One of the most serious ones being the potential for Ramona Road to have a landslide issue related to the influx of water through the road mass fill into Ramona Road. So we initiated this program to begin to look at all of the water-related issues in the district, and from a bottom-to-top perspective, we did a lot of surveying with the firm Kieran Wright, and then Schaff and Wheeler came on board to look at to develop a master plan of all of the water movement control features, how they're related. And some of the interesting features about those is that there's a lot of features that are both in the public right-of-way and on private property. And so what that does is that gives the district a very unique capability to work in an area and identify problem areas on private property. And the county specifically does not work in private property. So this gives the district a unique role to be able to satisfy some of LAFCO's requirements that we provide services that are unmet by other county departments and other public agencies. So all of this has culminated in a 6-year effort now to put together this master plan, and I'd like to introduce Caitlin Gilmore from Schaff and Wheeler, who is going to run us through the storm drain master plan, and appreciate all the hard work that she and Chuck Anderson have put into getting this master plan put together and giving the district the opportunity now to implement some of the necessary changes. So thank you, Bob.
Well, I'm not Caitlin. You'll see Caitlin a lot more than you'll see me. What I want to do is just give you, before Caitlin really delves into the details of this and the unique situation you find yourself in, I thought it might be useful first just to tell you a little bit about who we are, what we do, so you have an idea of what we've been about. Schaff and Wheeler, we are civil engineers that focus exclusively in water resources field. So we have a lot of experience in hydrology, which is determining how much water is, hydraulics, how it flows, drainage studies like the one we're doing here, watershed assessments, stormwater management. Caitlin in particular has a lot of expertise in permitting and involved in stormwater management, including water quality, and also importantly sort of construction management, thinking a little bit down the road when we start actually implementing the features she's going to talk about with a master plan. So anyway, we were started by Jim Schaff and Kirk Wheeler in 1985. That's just right when I was getting out of college. I joined the firm in 1993. I'm actually the president of the firm. We have 25 people. Caitlin's one of our most capable engineers, and like I said, she'll be showing you the results of the study we've done. And just so you know, we have 25 people. 14 of us are actually registered professional engineers in California, and some of us in other states, and that, believe it or not, ranks us among the top 25 engineering firms in Silicon Valley, and they rate it by how many registered engineers you have. So there you go. It might also be useful before we kind of delve into the master plan here at Los Trancas. This is a roster of some previous master plans we've done. Thought it might be useful to just talk about why would you do master planning generically. even before we get into the specifics of what you have here. So as David said, a master plan is just that. It's a master plan. You start off at a really high level looking at things, and you start zeroing in before you actually do the really detailed design work and put together construction plans. You're doing this for a number of reasons. You want to make sure you're not, everything is a part of an integrated whole. In other words, you don't want to, there's a tendency sometimes to just start solving a problem here, and maybe taking a little bit of a shotgun approach, and then realizing, well, I'm going to get rid of my drainage issue over here, I'm going to route the water over here, you put it somewhere else without necessarily looking at the implications of putting it there. We don't want to do that. That's why you do a master plan. It's generally what we found for our clients throughout the Bay Area and Central Coast. It's money really well spent because it prevents you from doing, just to be blunt about it, something stupid, spending a lot of money doing something stupid before you've thought it out. And overall, the money to do this is really a fraction of ultimately what you spend to implement everything. But again, that's why we do it generically. And then the process itself, what we ended up doing here, I don't know, those of you remember when we were here previously, we showed you what's called the Geographic Information System. This is cataloging all the facilities, the drainage areas, characteristics, some of which Caitlin is going to go through, soil types, rainfall, all those things. And then it provides a geographic information system. It's just a way of cataloging everything so you have access to it. Once we do that, we establish storm drain methodologies and criteria. And that just has to do with what kind of level of risk are we willing to live with. Here, talk a little bit about what a 100-year flood means. What are we willing to live with? And again, on a master plan level, that means you're doing things consistently everywhere. You're not have one set of criteria over here and have another set of criteria over here. It kind of keeps it, I don't use the term fair and balanced, but fair and balanced, if you will. We're not going to get political. Caitlin in particular spent a lot of time with the help of members of the board and other people assessing the existing storm drain condition out there. And then we analyze that to see how can we move that water safely downhill, which is what water wants to do, unless you spend money to pump it uphill or somewhere else, so that we can avoid some of those issues, the landslides and flooding on people's property. Once we figure out how everything's sort of working on that integrated scale, then we identify projects to meet that level of standards so that we're providing the flood protection we want. With that, then we put together what's known as a capital improvement plan. Those are projects needed to rectify the problems and meet that standard of level of service for drainage. And those priorities are established by the risk involved, what's the relative risk of certain issues, what does it take to solve it. Things that are more risky, you want to put as a higher priority to fix, and then some things just aren't as dangerous, aren't as risky, they have a lower priority. Again, that goes back to what master planning is. It's taking a smart look at this, planning things so you want to get the most bang for your buck. You want to fix the things that are higher priorities first, rather than just kind of taking a guess and spending your money that way. And then lastly, we come up with cost estimates for that capital improvement program that's what we present to the board and then for further discussion. So without further ado, we'll bring Caitlin up. I guess we're asking that she has a lot of material to present. I know you're going to have a lot of questions. There'll be plenty of time afterward to answer that, but maybe you would indulge us and let Caitlin get through the material, because hopefully she can actually answer some of those questions as we go along.
So let's get into the specifics here. So the district is very unique, and we start with the hydrology. So talking about rainfall and the properties of the district. So starting from the source. So the climate is different here than the rest of the Bay. You have a 32-inch median annual precipitation in this area, which is about threefold what you'll see down by the Bay. They have about 12-inch, depending on where you're at. So we're getting a lot more rainfall up here for starters. Then when we talk about when it hits the ground and gets into the soils, so this is the map of the district. We have the orange line is the ridge line through the middle. Then you have Los Trancos Creek here, Corte Madera Creek here, both going out to Francisco Creek, which goes out to the bay. So you have all your water flowing from the ridgeline down to the creeks and then out north to the bay. So we have very, very steep slopes, as you all know, meaning that any rainfall falling is going to be traveling through the district at a much more rapid pace than anywhere else. You also have what's known as hydrologic type B soils. B soils are fairly free draining, meaning you're going to have a lot of groundwater flow. So you're going to have surface flow, which you all can see, and then you're going to have a lot of water moving through the first foot or two of the soil itself, which with steep slopes, this type of soil, a high amount of rainfall, and you're going to develop unstable slopes. So then you're going to see landslides, etc. So that's the basis for what kind of problems you're dealing with, both on the surface and under. And then just to add more, you also have this approximate location of San Andreas Fault, running right through the middle of the district, which, if that were to ever move with your unstable slopes, is going to cause even more problems. So that's where we're at for the basics. Now, talking about your flood protection facilities that you have in place. In general, very ad hoc construction. So you have in green, these are the roadways. So we're talking about public property, county right away. Runs again the ridge line. Red is basically water movement downhill towards the creeks. So you're going to have a mixture of private and public infrastructure. Is the only way to get from the ridge line down to the water is passing through both private and public property in almost every location. So you've got so you'll notice that the design of the public streets is generally parallel to the creeks and perpendicular to the flow. So in most locations, you have flow coming down through private properties, crosses a small section of public right-of-way, and back down through private properties. Of course, you'll have some flow along the roads itself, but most of the flow is flowing perpendicular to the roadways, crossing through both jurisdictions, if you will. The drainage infrastructure was never designed cohesively with the master plan. It was very much someone develops their property, they find they have a lot of uncontrolled discharge, they channel it, they pipe it, and they discharge it on their neighbor. And their neighbor finds now they have a problem. So they channel it, discharge it, pipe it down to their neighbor. So it's this step design system with very few pipes being shared between multiple properties, except for some people have got together, figured out they could solve the problem together. So that's one kind of disadvantage, is that there isn't one system which delivers all the water from the top of the drainage basin to the bottom. Let's see. Another idea of that not being engineered is you'll see, as you see everywhere, the roadway cross-section has this great rural aesthetic, which you all, I'm sure, know and love because you wanted to live up here kind of out of the downtown, very engineered, structured community, which shows that we get roads that don't have the typical structure of being crowned in the center, paved out to the sides with curb and gutter. Those roadways are designed to convey flood flows that don't fit in the drainage system. By having more rural roads without these, with the curbs and gutters, you're going to get water where it's coming down the hill, it gets onto the roadway, and then wherever you hit a low point, it's just going to sheet flow and discharge down the hill across private property.
I'm sorry, because I know you asked not for questions, but I have a threshold question, because you're talking about the district.
Oh.
But you don't show a northern boundary of the district. So it appears that we're just talking about Los Trancos Woods and not the whole water district? Or are we talking about the whole water district?
The whole water district.
That's the whole district on the
It's
map.
the whole, the bottom here,
That's
this is
all
what's
this
more
No,
Vista
Blue
Verde
Oaks is
area.
in the district and it's not on there.
What is, I'm sorry?
The whole Blue Oaks area is in this water district, but it's not shown on your map.
I'm sorry, what part of Blue Oaks?
No, this is the first step in coming up. First of all, I want to point out to everybody that this is a draft document. And the reason we're having this meeting tonight is to introduce you to the draft and give people an opportunity to look at the draft and review the draft and to point out whatever shortcomings it may have. And I'm sure that it has some. The first stage of this thing was to take it down, is to start in the Vista Verde and Los Troncos Woods neighborhoods, but understanding, and I think the maps will portray this pretty clearly, that the traditional flows beginning way back with Los Troncos Woods and more recently with part of Vista Verde, the outflow for the traditional drainage pathways is onto the public, or the private, I guess, open space that's part of Blue Oaks. So the idea is that ideally there would be finally a full mapping of the entirety of the system. This is the major start point because this is the area that is most impacted currently by the flow of water.
Okay, so simple question, we're only talking about part of the district at this point.
Yes, at this point, mainly the Vista Verde and Los Troncos Woods part of the district.
But we have looked at the impact to Blue Oaks.
We do have the hydrology and hydraulics and the mapping of Blue Oaks, and it is included, what we have done is in the report, that's not specifically shown on this map. Okay. So, as far as any projects or work that would be done because of this setup of private to public infrastructure, any work on private property, unless it's done by the owner of the property itself, would require a right of entry permit by anyone doing work. And conversely, anyone doing work on county property would need the blessing of the county and an encroachment permit to do that. This is different than, say, other areas where the county owns the entire system and would require an easement through private property in order to maintain and install a drainage system that is part of the county system. So that type of structure is different up here, being that the county does not own the entire system. So these drainage easements don't exist at this point. So that meaning that anyone on their private property at this point could change their drainage infrastructure as they see fit, although it could damage downstream neighbors, but because there's no ownership besides private, it's really up to you to be a good neighbor with your drainage infrastructure. So kind of a history of the flooding and maintenance issues, both as, I know the district got a lot of information from residents that they sent in or mentioned about where they've seen flooding issues, and I know that they've spent forever walking around with BAG engineers, checking out all the infrastructure and seeing where there are shortfalls in the existing system. And then there's just some general, as my firm has walked around to see really areas where it's clear there's going to be flooding issues with the system based on the way it's been installed and designed. So this map here to the left, it's showing hatched areas where we know there are some drainage issues, and they've been identified, just kind of, hey, there's an issue here, and then we looked into it further when we were working with what projects could be designed to fix the issues. On a side note, all of this brown area that's hatched around is kind of an overlay. I have a pretty good map of it in the back later on the left. All of the shaded brown areas are areas identified as potential or existing land sites by BAG engineers. It's kind of a shocking figure because it shows a good percentage of the area covered by these landslides. As far as flooding, I've got a few pictures here. This one here is the Ramona Inlet, where they're installing the new wall on the downhill side of the road. And I wasn't present for this, but I imagine that this was a combination of just too much flow for the system, in addition to clogging of the inlet that is right there. Been down there, and there's no trash track or anything on the inlet, so if any debris were to come down this creek and clog it, that could easily be the result. And then this is just a side gutter on, I believe, a driveway. And just, this happens throughout, I don't mean to pick on this particular gutter, but There's a lot of debris, most of it natural in this area, so a lot of branches, living trees, leaves that can clog the existing system. So even if you have a great system, full size, et cetera, if it's not maintained, it's gonna be clogged and it's probably gonna fail. And I think that's one of the biggest issues up here, is the maintenance and the clogging. This section,
Question?
yes,
Are you open to input on more of those areas that ought to be hatched than what's shown on that map?
certainly.
And what would it take? Would there need to be documentation?
I don't know how the district was accepting this type of information, or I think, I know you've been emailed, et cetera. I don't know how you want to receive comments for incorporation in the document.
Well, I think to send it in to Steve Mara, the program coordinator, and then he can forward on to you. Yeah.
If you could email, I believe the email address is available for Steve Morrow.
Yes.
You could email that and I'll be sure to look at it and incorporate it.
Okay. What constitutes the criteria for being hatched?
It's fairly loose. I mean, do you see flooding there? And you know maybe why. You can give a recommendation of why you think there's a problem, and I'll go look at it. Tell you from an engineering standpoint what I'd say, but
I've been roaming the neighborhood, and in one particular case, a property owner commented about some damage to their property from water coming down the road and jumping the curb right at their house. And so, you know, it caused property damage. It would seem like it ought to be.
oh, absolutely. Property damage is definitely makes the cut. This last figure, I don't know if it's a picture rather. I don't know if it's the best to show, but another feature in a good amount. I think this is more in the northern portion of the district than in the southern. But you see where there's no curb, and then the valley gutter is on the uphill side of the road. So you get the valley gutter connects up water that's coming off the hillside, but then the road itself slopes away from the valley gutter. So any water coming down the road is not entering the gutter system. It flows down the hillside and on people's properties. So that's another flooding issue that can cause damage. Let's see. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention is about this maintenance is that as far as on the right-of-way, the county has the responsibility of maintaining their system. And I should pulled up and it's included as the final appendices in the report, but the county has, Public Works Department has a watershed maintenance plan that's in place. You can find it on their website that has for every one of their unincorporated county or jurisdictions, they've mapped all the roadways that they are scheduled to maintain and their schedule of maintenance. This area is scheduled to be maintained the first and third Thursday of every month. And I don't live out here, but I imagine they're not out here every other week. So that's kind of one of the things that, you know, as a conclusion, might be to help this whole system is, you know, getting them to actually do what they say they are going to do out here, and that is to clean it more often. More maintenance, the more times they remove trees, the leaves, and et cetera, other debris from the system, the more prepared your system is for the next storm. A quick regulatory section. This is all in chapter 2 of the report that we have. There's a few different governing bodies that, besides just the county, that are going to have jurisdiction over anything you do to the storm drain system up here. One being CEQA. That process for any new construction has a variety of impacts on your construction schedule and costs, et cetera. The first category of CEQA compliance would be getting a categorical exemption, which is usually for projects that are in an existing roadway or upsizing an existing pipe. CEQA is all about how you're impacting the environment. So maintaining or upsizing or fixing an existing system, especially if it's in a paved right-of-way, you're not going to affect any animal habitat, et cetera. You can pretty easily and pretty cheaply, if you get a categorical exemption, you do your work. Some of our work would require what's known as initial study. So you need someone to come out to your project and say, how is this project going to affect the environment? And then that would result in either a negative declaration, meaning this project won't impact the environment, you're good to go, or a mitigated negative declaration which says, you know, you may have some impacts, but if you plant these trees or, you know, only do construction this season so you don't affect this frog or et cetera, that your project's also going to be fine and you can go ahead and proceed. One step further than that is having to do an actual EIR, which is a very costly and very time-consuming document. That's when you have significant impacts to the environment. And at that point in time, if we end up with a project that is like that, then you start thinking of alternatives to that project, is because it's likely a budget killer. So, but most of the projects that I've identified in the capital improvement plan fall under one of the ones I've listed here. So they should all be reasonably doable. The other item is if you're doing a new creek outfall to either Los Trancos or Corte Madera Creek, they're waters of the state, recognized by the state. So therefore, they require, if it's a new outfall, not an existing one, there's plenty of existing here, you'd have to fill out a JARPA permit, the Joint Aquatic Resource Permit application. That's a permit application that covers all of, it tells you basically which permits you need for the Regional Water Quality Control Board, Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife. It basically gathers them all in one permit. They say what they need from you, and then you comply with their permits that way. So it adds some money and some schedule to your project, but certainly doesn't stop it. And then the NPDES is state permits or regional, which permit. These projects won't enact them in a real significant way. I think the most significant thing for these from stormwater projects is that complying with a construction permit, which is all about trying to reduce sediment loading into the water body due to construction. It's a lot about good housekeeping practices on the construction site of installing storm drain inlet protection. All of, you probably see some of the construction sites around here doing it, the straw bales, et cetera. So that's the permitting out here that
Can I
lots
ask
to
you-
think about.
Quick question, the stars on there.
Yeah.
Those indicate,
These are
potential
projects that we've
projects.
identified where if you did these projects, you probably need more significant permitting than just a
Eventually.
categorical exception.
right.
The projects themselves, they're really detailed in the report.
Yeah, okay.
And we'll get a little bit more into what the projects are.
That's
And
kind
a
of
little bit.
clarified.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't tell you what my figure was. Yeah, there's, I think there's like 9 projects, if you were to do them, you'd need a little bit more permitting. So we've identified those in the report, both in the cost estimating and the description of the projects to flag that. Because sometimes it'll take another 6 to 8 months or even a year for permitting. So if you want to do your project now, you got to think about it beforehand. I think this was mentioned, and you probably saw them out here, but Karen Wright helped us with surveying of the existing storm drain system. And the survey was really key to doing this entire report, because you certainly can't evaluate what has capacity and how to fix your storm drain system if you don't know where it is. So you'll notice this is all the red. So these are all the survey points. All of their surveys go straight into the GIS. They couple together lovely. So all the things that they surveyed, pipes and gutters, outfalls, curbs, roadways, they really helped us with that so that we could then identify where the system is and then move on to developing a capacity evaluation. So going through the different system elements that we analyzed. So pipes. This included pipes that were serving, I guess I should do a blanket statement. We did not analyze the capacity of any system that serves one property and not another. So if you have a pipe that goes from your roof and then discharges at the downside of your hill and it doesn't go into another system, we didn't analyze it because we were going to walk over every single person's property. It's just a little time consuming. But in addition to that, we really wanted to focus on systems that serve more than one property. Because if you have a local, your pipe to your roof leader drains isn't working, then it's kind of a single property issue that should be dealt with there. So the pipes that we were analyzing were pipes that were both in the right-of-way and larger pipes that served more than one property throughout the district. So these were often, if they were older pipes, often corrugated steel. A lot of issues with corrugated steel pipes, they can corrode and rot the bottom out. Therefore, when storm drain, once water flows into the system, it's basically discharged back into the ground again, almost like an infiltration bed. So that's a problem of maintenance of existing storm drain. Another issue you can see in this one here, there's a lot of driveway gutter culverts, and they get driven over and crushed, whether they be crushed in the middle of the pipe or the ends, which severely decreases the capacity of the pipe. Also, gutters and ditches. So the roadside gutters, which I already mentioned, the problems there end up being, one, it's either on the upside hillside of the road, so therefore capturing not very much of the roadway flow, or a lot of them, it looks like they were paved continuously when the county came in and paved over the roadway. Therefore, it really fluctuates in capacity. There can be some really shallow parts of the gutter, and if you have a storm flowing through the gutter and it hits one of these shallow parts, it's going to dump all the water out that you've captured in the system right back on the roadway and down the hillside. So that ends up being a problem for these roadside gutters, is the inconsistent capacity, and every time they're going to come in and pave, it's going to get less and less capacity unless they dig it out. Also, there are some ditches. You can see one here, and there's a bunch throughout the district that are not paved. So anytime you get one of these, you collect a lot of storm water in a low-lying system, and it'll infiltrate into the ground. These are often right next to the roadway. Now you're saturating the roadbed, and if this is in a steep area, you're saturating the roadbed, which can lead to more erosion. And this water will end up traveling through the roadbed down the hill and possibly causing undercutting and landsliding on the downhill side. So a lot of times, unlined ditches, although they look more natural, can often be a problem because of stability issues. As far as inlets, I don't know if this one's a great one you can see, but this happens frequently throughout the district. We have water coming one direction, and the inlet to the pipe is in a 90-degree angle. And that's difficult. Water does not like to change directions. So you end up having water, flowing up the other side of the hill or pouring over the side of the road. It's difficult for water to just turn like that, and you end up getting discharges from that system at that point. The roadways themselves, I think I've beat this one to death a lot, but they're sloped in such a way that ends up sending water down people's driveways or across their properties as opposed to into a storm drainage system. As far as detention ponds, this figure is a little hard to see, but so this is Water District Lake on Lake Road here, and then this is the Frog Pond, and they're both on the two other sides of the main ridge line that goes through the district. This red star is the highest point. This is in Blue Oaks open space. This is the highest point in the district. So you'll notice that these ponds are actually very near the top of district lands. So therefore, they're intercepting water from the top, but don't really provide much storage for the rest of the district. So they're not intercepting water and helping, and by helping, I mean providing detention storage capabilities to reduce the peak flow that the infrastructure sees, because they're so high within the district. And there's only two of them. There could always be more. So I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So before I talk about the capacity and how we evaluated that, the last time we were here, I feel like I discussed at length the way we did hydrology and basin delineations, etc. There is a map in the back that shows all of the drainage basins. I don't feel like we needed to go over that in detail again. But I will say, so we delineated drainage basins, and I would say the point to talk about this is that what makes this area unique is drainage basins are generally delineated by their outfall. So all of the land that flows to one outfall point would be one basin. In the district, there's 26 basins, meaning that they all have separate places same creeks perhaps, but very distinct, separate places that they are discharging to the creek. So what that means for projects is something you do in, this is drainage basin A, the pink one, isn't going to affect basin B at all, because they're hydraulically separated. So that's unique for this area. The more low-lying areas might have 4 basins in the whole city, but we've got 26 in this one little area. So you have to analyze them each individually, and one generally doesn't affect the other unless you change your flow patterns. Oh, I didn't put that aside. Okay. So the existing system capacity, we came up with 3 different conditions. You know, the worst condition, medium, and everything's okay. And this is based purely on, not on what we see out there, not on maintenance issues, but purely based on hydraulic calculations. So condition 1 is the worst case. It means that during a 10-year storm event, this system will flood. It can't control that. So those are shown in the master plan as being red. So we looked at the gutters, the streets capacity themselves, and the pipes, and then the streams that go from the actual creek, and then there'll be like a little stream that goes up to the actual drainage system. So those incised channels down by the creek. So we analyzed all of those and came up with either that they're condition 1, worst case, they can't handle it. Condition 2, they can handle the 10-year event, but they can't handle a 100-year event. So the major storm that they would be flooding during. And then condition 3, which says, based on hydraulics, this system can handle the storm event. Okay. Then, after we did that for the whole area, for all the systems that we had analyzed, which is a side note, it's clearly in the report, but all of the Blue Oak system, the newer system in the open space to the north of Los Campos Woods, that entire system can handle a 100-year storm and then some. It's significantly oversized. It's a good thing up here. So I was pleasantly surprised. Being that it's a new system and designed by BKF engineers, that's good for them. Let's see. For reference, I just chose this as one example of how the projects are shown in the master plan. We have Frog Pond here, and this is Joaquin Road coming down up from the ridge to the top, Old Spanish Trail. So when it came to identifying projects and then prioritizing them, so what the goal was to fix, 1, any problem where identified flooding is occurring, and 2, fix any problem where there's no, or give a project where there is insufficient capacity in the existing system as we've identified it. So we identified about 30 projects overall, and those can be grouped, et cetera, to be less than 30 in number, but 30 projects that could be done separately. I shouldn't say that. Separately is the wrong word to use. 30 individual projects that are based on whether they have existing capacity or not, what level of risk they cause to structures, or risk to road beds. The significant access features were considered more, at a higher priority level than just risk to erosion in open space where no structure is put into danger. They also put into the prioritization was known flooding issues. This bottom to top approach is when you are designing any system, you can't fix what's at the top of the watershed first unless you know you have capacity at the bottom of the watershed. So if you fix a problem at the very top and you allow all the flow that used to be flooding everywhere to enter one system and discharge down the hillside, you can overwhelm your systems at the bottom because those ones perhaps do not have capacity. So you're basically taking the flooding on your property and just moving the flooding problem downhill. So you have to fix the outlet first and work from the bottom up in order to make sure you're not causing flooding on your neighbor. So that was worked into the prioritization process. There can be no high priority project above a low priority project because you have to do the one at the bottom first anyway, or at the same time. Another thing we looked at was to group projects by basin. Grouping projects saves costs for construction, among other things I'll discuss a little later. So we came up with 3 general priorities high, medium, and low. And I would say it's described in the report, but I'd say it's loosely based on high priority would be a project where identified flooding has happened and you have either medium or condition level 1 or 2, so that's kind of a medium or high capacity issue, and we know flooding happens there. Or they have a high, they have a condition level 1, meaning they have a capacity issue, of the worst kind. So those were the higher levels. Medium level being that we know there's a flooding problem, but according to our calculations, there's no capacity problem, more of a medium risk problem. And then the lower were projects where we've identified a capacity issue, but we, upon site walks, et cetera, did not notice any capacity issues. So, or sorry, not capacity, any reason why it would flood, or more likely it wouldn't cause any damage if it did flood. So even if the pipe was surcharged and did flood, it wouldn't cause damage to anyone's property. So those are more low priority. So once we've identified all of these potential areas for projects, did some extensive site walks because they're all so unique. Each problem in almost no place was it just, okay, we just have to put a bigger pipe in. There was much more to it. Perhaps it was that the water couldn't get into the system because the inlet was undersized or placed at the wrong location, or water was flowing over the side of the road because there was no curb line. So it was more than just upsizing pipes. So a lot of site walks with the district's help to figure out what's a unique solution for each problem area. And when we're developing the capital improvement projects, there were a few other methodology things that came into play for each of the design. We tried to incorporate as much as possible. One was to move flow to the right-of-way as much as possible, so it's not going through private property. The best, I mean, in a perfect world, it'd all be in the right-of-way, right? So at any point in time, we could get it into the right-of-way and off private property, that's the design we did. Where that wasn't possible, we tried to place these projects on property lines or near property lines as much as possible, share the burden of having a storm drain system through your yard, and try and get it from, cutting through the middle of someone's yard and kind of making the space unusable. Just kind of get it out of the way as much as possible. One thing to always keep in mind is you don't want to, do no harm. You don't want to create a project that just takes your flooding and makes someone else flood. Not only is it not being a good neighbor, but you open yourself up for a lawsuit, and that would be, you don't want that. That's a lot more money than a new project anyway. Also, redirecting any flow from the top of the drainage basins into ponds as much as possible, or that way, the whole purpose of the pond is to retain flow from high storm events, to reduce the peak flow downstream, create storage, potentially. So that was another option that was tried to work into each project improvement, and where we could, and you'll see this is, so here we have Dog Pond and the Water District Lake. This is Old Spanish Trail, Lake Road, and then we come down, Vista Verde is here, Los Trancos comes around. And this parcel here is Water District land, and this is El Rey coming here. So we also tried to work in where we could in either Water District property or open space. The alternative, we did provide non-pond alternatives, but an alternative of installing a detention pond where it would be feasible. Because that could really help downstream infrastructure if a pond could be established to reduce those peak storm flows. So this is one alternative for a project is infrastructure that goes into a pond here on Water District property. And then the other, for this particular instance, would to redirect the flow downstream of the Broad Pond. So different alternatives are given kind of to create the same result, and the result being less flooding downhill. And all of this flow here actually eventually makes it through Ramona Road, where the Spanish Creek and where that is. So anything new to reduce flow there is also good. And another design aspect, in order to reduce costs and time, is to reuse existing outfalls wherever possible. Creating new outfalls is a big headache when it comes to permitting. And in addition to that, I mean, it's hard to just walk down in that creek, down in Los Trancos or Cordillera Creek, let alone construct something down there. So it's going to significantly increase the cost of your project if a contractor has to get some heavy machinery down there, both for permitting and just feasibility. All right. So once we really narrowed down what these projects could be, we gave alternatives where we could, and created these 30 projects throughout the district and these projects we gave a project for every single low, medium priority site that we could. And there's a kind of a cut sheet in the appendices of the report where you could pull out just one project and it shows the project itself in detail, what pipe sizes, etc. I will note that these aren't construction level drawings, they're concept. They would need to be brought up to a construction level by either by an engineer or a design build contractor who has the skills to do that as well. So these are very conceptual. How big does the pipe need to be? Not exactly where is it placed. That can be more. That can be done on a much higher detail than what we shown. We then moved on to cost estimating. So cost estimating, we do this a lot. It's based on projects and bids we've seen in the area for similar projects recently. So get a lot of these, put them together. We're constantly changing our unit cost numbers to try and follow the trends as the industry goes. So we put costs, and the base, the 50% here is the actual work. So we're talking about the man time, the labor hours, the equipment, and the pipe, the trenching itself. Then, because this is conceptual level, we got add a lot of stuff on top of that. So we have 10% for mobilization. Mobilization is to get the contractor out here with his equipment and his guys. It can often be a significant portion of the project. So, and I had mentioned that, I started to mention that earlier, and I'll finish my thought now, is that by grouping projects together, you can really save a lot in mobilization and permitting costs by grouping that together. Because if the contractor is going to charge you $5 or $10 grand just to get out here, you better get your bang for your buck and get him to do a lot of stuff while he's here. So the more you can group, the more you'll save on that portion of the project, as well as permitting, encroachment permits, etc. The more you can get done under one permit, usually the cheaper it'll be, especially with environmental permitting as well. I put in 10% for that. There's also a 10% for engineering. Some projects, they could be engineered by just an engineering firm, such as ourselves or any other civil engineering firm. A lot of contractors, especially if they're smaller pipe projects where you already have the sizes identified, a lot of contractors will finish up the design for you to make it more detailed to exactly what they're going to do. So that can sometimes be looped into construction. And the last is contingency. It's just the extra what if for what might happen over the next course of time between now and when you want to design it for any sort of flexibility. So we did that. Every project is, they have the cost estimate is detailed down to the unit cost in the report, so you can see where our numbers came from. And then one of the other items that is separate, it's not part of permitting, is environmental permitting. Any of those 8 stars we saw a while ago, all those ones that I said required more permitting, we added a line item for that. So it is accounted for separately. This permitting is more just erosion control stuff and encroachment permits, and it's really construction permitting versus the environmental, which is usually more money and was delineated separately. So once we had all these cost estimates and we have all these projects that we have at low, medium, and high, which is kind of a general priority of how they should be done, we then took these 2 things and created, which is at the back of chapter 4, we created a CIP section of, it's really theoretical, it can be changed. It says if you were to do all of the medium and high level projects over the next 10 years, this would be our engineer's recommendation of which ones you do each year. So it is a combination of all this prioritization that we talked about. It's a combination also of cost. You're going to want to take the high level ones that cost the least amount of money, or it would make a lot of sense to do them at the same, do them earlier, get them done first. Also into that is grouping them by basin, which can save you mobilization and permitting costs. So grouping projects together that are right next door to each other makes a lot of sense. So that came together in this more detailed schedule that gives you more of a 1 through 30 of what we, from a very engineering, non-biased perspective, would say we would recommend you do them in this order. Also included in that table, the costs do reflect an inflation. So projects you do later, it shows what the base cost is if you were to do it this year. And then it shows you, well, if you do it 10 years from now, it's clearly going to cost more. So we use an inflation rate that's detailed in the report as well to show that if you do it over 10 years, the projects in the future will cost more than. So beyond the actual improvement plans and the actual projects, there's a few other things that are important to a functioning storm drain system that perhaps don't get included in specific projects or could be worked into each of the individual capital improvement projects. One, traffic safety. The way that the rural aesthetic that I was referring to before, and the idea of having these roadside ditches, well, they end up being paved, which means they look exactly like the road, especially late at night. And if you have this, this slender road, and you have these huge ditches on the side of the road, which in a lot of our projects we recommend increasing the capacity of these ditches from just the little tiny thing you have to like 1.5 feet. You run the risk of driving into it and bottoming out the car, which so it would be a really good idea to do white pavement striping on the edge of the reflective striping on the edge of the drainage ditch. Perhaps where it's really bad, they have these semi-permanent flexible cone things you can run over, but are more clear of where these ditches are. So I know it's not as pretty as having a nice roadside, but I believe actually it's happened recently that cars driven into one of these, and it causes the car and the drainage system some damage, so it's just a good idea. Along the ideas of safety, trash racks, there's a nice makeshift one out of a fence. Trash racks, besides the maintenance, I'll talk about in a minute, but trash racks provide this safe level of safety. You have a lot of very large inlets to storm drain structures that children or animals could fit in. And now that we have a survey which shows what the invert of those inlets are, they're often 20, 25 feet down, which you can't tell from just looking at it from the outside. But if you were to go into one of them, you'd immediately fall 20 to 25 feet. And there's nothing preventing anything from doing that at this point. So it would be a very good idea to install them from a safety and risk standpoint. In addition, there's a ton of makeshift trash racks that people put out there to try and help with the maintenance of the system, try and keep debris out of the pipes. Some of them work, some of them don't work so well. But one thing that's good about an engineered trash rack, one, they're secured in place so that they don't end up going down with the storm. But in addition, they're often placed at, and they're designed in such a way that, and placed at such an angle that they allow the water to push trash up the rack or debris, whether it be leaves, and water to still enter the system. So a design trash rack should be incorporated in the new project designs of the inlets. They're easy to place while you got a contractor out there at the same time. And there's the concept of trash racks, you have to maintain them, which people, something to maintain, more things to maintain are always a pain. But it's a lot easier to rake trash off a trash rack than it is to have to hydrojet your pipes, which is really expensive. Other maintenance, and I wanted to bring this up, haven't found a solution for this, but, there's scheduled maintenance, whether it's done as often as it should or not on the county system, but the private systems are generally maintained when something goes wrong. People don't, it's one of those, you forget about it, so it doesn't work anymore. And I don't mean to make this generalization, maybe some people are maintaining their systems frequently. But because there's so many private systems, they're not on a maintenance schedule, and without maintaining, they're going to be full of leaks and possibly fail in a big storm event. So not having scheduled maintenance on private systems can be a problem. So it's just something to make everyone aware of, that no one's going to maintain their systems, it's just on their property. And it ends up being, a perfectly good system can fail just because a bunch of leaves get in there and get stuck. All right, as far as the master plan itself, the document, it's really big. It's going to be a lot to get through. In the beginning, executive summary, be straightforward. Tell you what the plan is, what it's based on, and what the outcome was. Introduction is really the setting, what is the district's lands, and really what's the background up here, all about how much rainfall and just the general setting. Then I have a section on the regulatory requirements. That's all the permitting that I've been through and discussed that really needs to be remembered when we go into construction. Then the next section, so we're talking about chapter 3 now, is on the existing collection system. So it starts off with some exhaustive information about, from an engineering perspective, of how we calculated the capacity of the existing system, what equations and all of that, and how we identified the different capacities. It goes through what the capacities mean in a more detailed manner. It goes over the assumptions we made. We had to make a few since we don't know everything. And then it goes through on a basin basis, all the way from, I labeled the basins in numerical format, so they start with the letter all the way A through Z. Conveniently, there were 26. So it identifies all the projects that we've come up with. And then once you move into chapter 4, it's the capital improvement plan. So the projects are identified further. It's not just put a project here. It's pipe sizes. It's where inlets should be. It really defines the projects. And then it also places costs to them. It defines the prioritization procedure in detail. And then that chapter ends with the more detailed schedule that we've developed for implementation of the projects. And this last is, well, how do you find you throughout this whole project? I would think the best way to do is there's a map in the back, and you find out which basin you're in, whether A through Z. And then when you're going through the report, anytime you see your basin letter that's shaded in, it'll be a lot easier to find your house. Because it can get a little confusing. Yes?
Is there a GIS overlay that could put the house addresses in the final version?
I do have that. We did remove it from the figures, and I can't remember
I think that
when
would be
and
very
why, but
helpful
it does
for the
exist.
people to see who's next to them.
I don't know if
The
you want me to,
idea is not to
I don't think that was one.
create something where individuals could be, you can find your information, but we don't necessarily,
I mean, it's all the neighborhood map, so I wrote it in by myself, and it was very
great,
helpful once I
that's a
saw
good
it.
solution. You can do that.
But it took 4 hours, so you could do it in a few keystrokes. It'd be very helpful for us to see what's, where we're talking about.
It's a privacy issue, that's what I'm saying.
It's public record, is my address.
The addresses are public.
Yeah, the addresses are public.
Up to you guys.
I don't want to put the person's name on it, but just the address, street address.
Yeah, and that's something that we do have in the GIS database.
Yeah,
that we
just a
didn't
map.
publish, yeah, but we could, that's a suggestion, we'll certainly put into that, make it easier for people to locate.
So that's what I had to go through, so I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you have. I didn't want to go through each project individually. That would take forever, all 30 of them. They are drawn up in a map up on the back, and they are in the report itself. So feel free to look up at whatever project you like.
Hi, I'd like it if you could possibly take an example of just one and walk us through one.